Jeff.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. Yeah, it's evening here in Bombay and in Cincinnati.
Yes.
Yeah, it's morning
It's
time
morning
there.
in Cincinnati and it's 21 degrees and it's really cold.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I've never been to Cincinnati, but in one or two of the Netflix movies, the Hollywood movies, I saw glimpses of Cincinnati.
Oh, yeah? You know which ones?
No.
No?
But it sounds very romantic. Cincinnati sounds very romantic. It's rhythmic, all right, right?
No, it's a wonderful city. It still has some small town aspects to it, but it's a big city, so we have professional sports and things like that. But it's a very family friendly city, very safe. It's just it's a nice place to grow up, I think.
Great. And you know what? Thank you very much for keeping up your promise, your commitment from episode 6 that we had. And I said, I'm going to stop recording. And you said, bye or something to that effect. I said, no, please come back again and we'll discuss the management system that you beautifully drew. Okay. And then you said you're going to improve on your drawing. Okay.
Yes, I'm going to desperately try to improve on that drawing.
Thanks for coming back. And
yeah,
I'm sure we'll have a good time together. So let's start. Formality demands that I introduce you again. So
okay,
here we go. This often happens to me, so it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Yeah. So there you are, my guest. We are doing the episode 10 of my series, which I started in September. Supporting and sustaining continuous improvement process. And as we said earlier also, that irrespective of which path you take of continuous improvement, Six Sigma, Lean, Toyota Production System, TOC, what we found is that why do we stagnate after some time? And we talked about in episode 6 and we talked further. So to introduce you, we have already introduced you, but I have to do the honors being the host, Masters in Statistics, and you're the president of Value Creation and the regional partner for Six Sigma Management Institute.
Yes.
You're the certified Six Sigma Executive Master Black Belt. And you told me you're among the one of the 36, if my memory recalls, of Executive Master Black Belt. Am I right, sir?
20. I think there's 26.
26.
Yes.
Okay.
So when Dr. Harry passed, they refused to certify any more because they had to be certified directly by him. So that's why there's just a small number.
So the number is 26 right now, right?
I think that's right. Yeah.
Okay. So there you are in brief, career starting 34 years in GE, 34 long productive years in GE, and we're going to talk a lot about it. And before that, 3 years in General Motors.
Yes.
And we covered that, but let's hear from you further. So there are the episode 10. We are dividing into 3 parts. The first part, you're going to talk to us about the BOPI Management System. What does it BOPI stand for, Jeff?
Well, it's business. It's a pyramid and flow down. It's a business, operations, process, and individual.
Oh, great. We'd hear more about it. And then on the same episode, we are going to talk about the second part. We are going to talk about the effect of yield on business metrics.
Yes, just a very simple little simulation, and I plan to just do that by hand. to show how yield or lack of yield or poor quality impacts things like lead time and inventory and capacity, things like that. Very easy to understand. Yeah.
So nice, so great. Because people should understand the difference between the waste and the yield. We'll discuss it when we come to that, right? Okay. And then the
Yeah.
third part of episode 3, episode 10, the part 3 is the financial leverage from improving quality.
Yes, and I just wanted to, again, go over some very simple explanations of how corporate finance is impacted as you make these quality improvements, and just different ways of showing it. The purpose is, if the leadership doesn't recognize the financial impact, your efforts will not be sustained. And in fact, you won't even get started if they don't believe there's going to be, business performance, financial performance improvement. They wouldn't even be interested. So it's not that common for leaders at that level to understand that financial relationship with quality.
Great. So I hand it over to you. Let's talk about the first part, and we take it forward.
Okay. That's fine. Well, I'll show a
lovely.
couple of slides and we'll talk about it.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Okay, there we go.
Oh, lovely. You remember in episode 6, you drew it with your hand?
I'm trying to forget that.
Don't forget that. I'm going to remind you that you have done a very good job then, and now you're doing a better job now. Right. Let's hear from you.
Okay. Well, the context of that last episode was you were very interested, as you should be, in how can you sustain these efforts? So maybe you get some initial success and it dies out. And I think I explained how I experienced both of those when I was at GE, the tremendous success, and then over time, the falling away. And so I wanted to look at this system of management, so we can say Lean Six Sigma is a system of management. And one of the ways to make sure you're sustaining your efforts is to make sure your efforts are aligned with the business strategy. I mean, again, everyone knows that, but in practical terms, how do you do that? And so Dr. Harry created this pyramid, if you will, this hierarchy. And what we're going to emphasize here are the use of metrics. The use of metrics.
Can I hold you to that?
Yes. Yes.
I remember in episode 6, you said that any continuous improvement, whether it is Lean, Six Sigma, is bound to fail if there is no management system supporting it. I think that's the best that I can recall.
Well, I believe that, yes.
And then you drew that pyramid and said, we need a management system to support and sustain continuous improvement, whether it is Lean or Six Sigma.
Right.
Best that I recall, I think that's what you said. And
yes.
So this is the management system that you're introducing us to for supporting and sustaining. Okay.
Yes, this is one piece of it, and I was just going to mention a couple other things. Yeah. So yeah, thanks for that background. So what we want to let's just go through this. At the top are typically financial metrics, and I've just mentioned a few of them. They could be EBITDA, whatever, but usually at the business level, those are financial metrics. But then thinking of cause and effect, remember we spend a lot of time talking about cause and effect. Y is a function of X. If we're trying to improve cash, for example,
Yeah.
then what would we focus on? Well, in the operations world, see, this becomes kind of the X. So this is like the Y. This becomes one level of an X.
Yeah.
And so remember now, we're just talking about metrics at this point, just metrics. So for example, for cash, I could be tracking yield, maybe it's rolled through yield, different types of yields. Of course, inventory turns, these could be the types of operational metrics I would track. So I'm saying I want to improve cash. Well, of course, I would like to reduce inventory. So maybe I'm going to focus my business on inventory turns, all right? Because I know as I improve that, it's going to have an impact on the financial metrics. Or this is almost always the case, just the general idea of yield.
True.
How many good ones do we produce compared to how many we started? So as we improve that, of course, that's going to impact not just cash, but that'll impact your profit margin.
Yeah.
Of course, obviously, earnings per share. Anyway, I just want you to see we're constantly looking at this Y as a function of X. And then eventually you have to get down to individual processes. So if I'm trying, again, if I'm trying to improve yield, well, which processes give me the most leverage? If I improve the yield on these processes, it will roll up to the operational level, and then of course on to the cash level. So again, there's different metrics here at the process level compared to the operations, compared to the business level. And I'm going to erase some of this, but all of your efforts are going to be on the process. So my projects, if I could say projects, are going to be focused on these processes because it is the process that does the work through the workers, of course. So these are where you have your projects. And so you're looking at process capability here, down here at this level, process capability, okay? And then, of course, the individuals are the ones that execute those projects. So there are personal goals, there's personal requirements for the individuals. Yes.
I need to paraphrase what I'm understanding. So help me out if my understanding is correct.
Good.
So the business decision that why is of looking at, say, cash, okay?
Yeah.
That is decided by the top management?
Yes.
Okay.
Very critical.
So the top management decides what they're going to focus on. Is that for a financial year, or what is the time period that they're looking at?
They're primarily financial metrics, but every business will have their strategy.
Okay.
And whatever they want to focus on, we need a metric for that.
Okay.
But
so,
most of them already measure critical financial things. Yes.
Okay. So the business decisions, or what they're going to focus on, that is the why part of it, is the responsibility or the accountability, whatever terms you want to, of the top management, right, sir?
Yes.
And then that would become effective if the operations understand what the top management wants, right, sir?
Yes.
The operation would mean the functional heads, the middle management level. Am I right? Or
yes.
in the hierarchy?
Maybe general manager. Yes. Plant manager.
Plant level?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So
and see, those middle managers
yep.
will know their own metrics best. The C-suite will know the financial metrics best in the strategy. but now you're asking the operations managers, middle management, you're saying, well, we want to improve cash. What should you focus on? And then they will tell the C-suite. Okay, so, but it's metrics now. These are hardcore metrics.
Okay, then who takes charge of the process? Because at the process level, the top management doesn't come into the picture, right? Or
Correct.
how does it work? Who takes care of the process? Who is
Well,
the
again,
process
the operational managers, say the middle managers, they will go to their direct reports and they're going to ask, okay, what are the critical processes? Given that we have to improve yield, what are your critical processes for that? And then they let those managers provide that information and they will agree on the critical processes. And then again, those process owners will agree on those metrics. What do they intend to measure?
Okay. And then you come into that's where the project mode takes place, right? That's where the project takes birth.
That's where, well, the individuals, of course, are on the teams and leading those projects that were identified for those critical processes. Yeah.
And this information flows up and down, right?
It flows up and down. You can see that on the left.
Yeah.
So again, I believe, going back to sustaining, if the C-suite is not involved in communicating that strategy down through the organization, the chain will be broken. You'll lose the linkage between what the projects are working on and the business strategy. So they have to be very much involved in that. And then, of course, as you complete the projects, finance is going to be making sure that these improvements are actually rolling up to cash or whatever the strategy metric is. Yeah.
Okay, just out of curiosity, at what point of time do the business owners right on top interact with the process owners? Is it some sort of a routine, or there's a periodicity for that, or how does that happen?
Yeah, and I'll show a slide on that, just a real basic slide, but certainly in the occasional reviews of these projects, there's the beautiful time to interact with those process owners and those teams. Not all the time, but having the C-suite review some of these projects is a huge incentive. It makes the culture understand this is important. So project reviews is certainly one of them. Yeah.
What is the sort of safety net the top management gives those people who are doing the projects? Some projects may fail, some projects may not reach their top, but what sort of a support in these interactions do the top management give them if we have to sustain the movement?
Okay. Well, why don't you let me show the next slide, and let's start to answer those questions and see if this is what you're getting at.
Okay.
So these are things that leadership is required to do at different levels, but ultimately what's driving the improvement is the completion of these projects. Okay. So Joseph Duran, I think he was correct when he said improvement comes about project by project. Again, it doesn't matter if it's Lean or Six Sigma or some other method, it's project by project. Well, then you can see if that's true, that is a critical element of the value stream. So as we execute these projects, this is how we get verified savings, verified by finance. Okay, so the execution of projects is the value stream, but you can see all these inputs, kind of like Taguchi P diagram or something. These are the inputs that leadership own. Just an example. So we need the leadership to prioritize the projects. Select what areas are we going to focus on. You just got to have that. Align it with the strategy. And then I say students, but these are the employees. There's different levels of training that they need. So again, leadership has to decide on that. On some of these roles, you want your future leaders and your very best people, you want them to be trained in those skills. And so you don't leave that up to someone just posting a job and someone applies. Yeah.
I just want to clarify myself, okay, to myself, to be very specific.
Yeah.
Being a Gangba guy, okay, and it's when you say students, okay, projects are decided by the project owners and process. That part of it is clear. The students, are we talking about the frontline operators, the frontline supervisors at the Gamba?
We're talking about all of them, whether they are executives or whether they work on the floor in the Gimba. So we're assuming they need to be trained in order to do these projects. It's an extra skill level. And so there's different skill levels for different levels. Workers on the floor, they're capable of doing about anything, but I think of that as problem-solving approaches that involve more experience and logic, less data analysis, for example.
Yeah.
There's non-database problem-solving approaches, and I teach those. But as you want to get up to what we call black belts or lean masters, things like that, that's a very different level of training. And in any case, we need the leadership agreeing who needs what kind of training to accomplish that strategy. That's the idea. So the students are employees at any level, any level.
Okay.
And I mentioned this to you. Remember, these are all supporting elements for this engine here that's generating the savings, project execution. They need to be reviewed. There needs to be accountability for them. So the leadership is overseeing these projects. They're going to know how well they're doing. They're going to know if the ones they selected are working, and they can't understand that if they're not looking into the projects themselves and at least occasionally being part of the review. And of course, these employees that you choose, they need to be trained, they need to be coached. This is all leadership having to provide this. Of course, change management, always resistance to change. So leaders own, in general, they own that little SIPOC diagram there, that little flow chart.
Yeah. Now, I guess a little curious about this at this stage. I'm sure you will amplify it later, but just to satisfy my curiosity, how do you get the shop floor or the frontline employees and the officers involved in this process?
Well,
you can
example,
choose them, you can train them, but how are they getting involved? How do you get them involved?
So I get a call
ownership
from a CEO from a company.
Yeah.
I talk to them about ways of getting shop floor involved, as well as say salaried and other levels of professionals. And I say, look, I've got this 3-hour course here. We can run through some basic problem solving. We can take your shop floor through that. Now, why do they even care? The C-suite cares because they've got capacity problems. It's some kind of a problem. That's why they care. And so I talk to them about those various levels of training. So they want a culture change. And you can't do that if you're only training, 5% of the population, the employee population, in special skills. And so we want to come down and reach at all levels. So we just talk about how we can do that. And in this most recent case, they come to the class, make it clear why it's so important, promise them the support that they need so that they have time to work on these projects. The shop floor workers, that's kind of how they interact.
I understand from the project execution mode of it, that is time specific, that has got a specific period in which the projects have to be executed. However, coming to the change management and the culture part of it, which is a long time strategy.
Okay.
Yeah. So how does that get in sync with this project?
Well, I think you're using change management at the very beginning. Let's say you're starting this journey. You're using that change management where someone has to provide a clear vision, why this is important, what it's going to be like, tremendous communication, okay? And there's all kinds of little tools to help you find out sources of resistance. Most of them are legitimate, and how to address those. But yeah, there's a whole system, like a day-long training session you can put leaders through to help them on how to move from where they are to where they want to be. And the transition is very ugly, but they have to go through it.
Yeah, so let me capitalize on your 34 years experience in GE. Okay.
Yeah.
Is this?
Yeah.
I understand where you're coming from in the project listing, etc. I'm looking at it. Does this change management, the culture management, and the project management go parallel to each other? One precedes the other. We see the success of a project and then the culture is built up, or we see the culture and the project comes in. How does it sync? I mean,
Well,
please tell me your experience,
yeah.
sir.
Well, in the beginning, it's mostly change management because you're just getting started, of course. No one really knows the vision. They don't really understand the strategy. And so at the very beginning, it's all about communication and vision, okay? But of course, it doesn't take long and you immediately run into resistance. And you should expect that, and it's not wrong. So there are simple little tools that can be used, as a team to address the resistance and overcome it. One of the models is, and this was like 50, 60 years ago, but one of the models is that you look at it as a block of ice and your culture is frozen into that shape, a cube of ice. So you're trying to change the shape of that ice. And so what you have to first do is unfreeze it.
Yeah.
So that's the beginning of change management. And that's this vision and, why this is necessary, these types of things. So you have to unfreeze it. And then it's just in the water. Now you can refreeze it into a different shape. Okay. And so really part of changing the culture is actually going out and executing these projects and using metrics and doing these types of things. That's all culture change. But you need that front end change management, as I said, to get permission from the workforce to get started.
And I presume that they go parallel. It is not a sequential event. You have to run it side by side, and and do probably gauge what is happening and probably course correction. I mean, I want you to digress on that if it is okay with you.
Yeah, well, see, if the leadership isn't overseeing the effort, they're not going to know what the resistance is, what's not working. That's why I'm emphasizing they need to be part of the reviews of these efforts. Okay. So it is ongoing. So you got permission to get started. People know why you're doing it. They are willing to go get the training. And now they have started to work. But what's going to happen as they start to do these projects, even on the individual projects, they're going to run into resistance because you're trying to change something. So they're going to run into resistance. Then they have to have their immediate managers, for example, sort of run interference for them, help break down barriers so that they can be successful in their project. And all of that is change management. But again, it has to be, I think it has to be led from the top to be really successful. Okay.
Yeah, now straight, I mean, it's all, what do you call that? Straight from my gut level. Do these CEOs have time? They come, they preach, they tell you what it is, and they disappear.
They do that,
and then they keep. I'm so sorry, I'm getting it recorded, but it doesn't matter. That's my experience. That they come, they preach, and then they review, and the review is not what went right; it's what went wrong, and that goes down the line. That goes right down all the bashing that they get in the review meeting. They go right down till. Does that affect the project? Does that affect the change management? How do you overcome all that? I'm sorry, I have to ask you straight.
Okay, well, there was a lot of questions in there. So what was the first question that you just presented to me?
First question is the CEOs that they come and they give their vision.
Okay.
They preach.
Okay, let me say a couple words about that.
Yeah.
That's my experience as well. The CEOs don't have time. That's in quotes. They don't have time. But Dr. M, they're going to have time for things that they believe are going to make their business more successful. They're going to give you that time. It's not believing that I think is kind of a root cause of why they think, okay, we'll go train some people and I can claim we're doing lean or whatever. We'll go train some people. And that's about the only commitment you get. But you see, that's because they don't believe it's really going to help their business. They're not convinced. So it's, you mentioned a false start in some of our preliminary conversations. I think that's the most common false start. So that's why I wanted to talk about some simple finance things here. I believe that's what the C-suite has to get a hold of. And then they're going to be willing to train and so forth.
Jeff, I'm sold into that concept by saying that the CEOs or the C-suite should know what is beneficial for them. Whose onus is it for them to realize it? Many of the organizations do not have the luxury of hiring an external expert. I don't like the word expert, okay?
Yeah.
You know why I say that.
Yeah.
Is that they have internal stream of continuous improvement career professionals in their organizations, okay? They're employees of the organization, internal people. They have external people too. Now, what is their roles? How do the internal people, do they have a say in convincing the top management that this is the benefit you're going to get? Okay, you can reverse that question to me by saying that if they did not believe in that, why did they have the function?
Yeah. But well, internally, people do have an influence. My opinion is it takes something external going to the C-suite, someone from outside going to the C-suite and trying to open their eyes to the potential of this. I don't think that's going to come from internal, okay? That's my opinion.
Yeah, but who has to invite the external?
Well, okay, yeah, so it still has to be the C-suite. So yeah, I think that's a huge constraint, let's say, in making this successful. I will say though that at GE it was external. It was a combination. Well, I'll forget some of my names here, but Dr. Harry did come from the outside to address the corporate leaders, and particularly Jack Welch. So that came from outside of GE, as I was describing, and then they decided to adopt it. Okay. But I wanted to say another example at Motorola. It was an engineer internally who persisted in providing a solution for why Motorola's products were failing so early. They were losing that part of their business. It was very significant. And that was Bill Smith. And internally, he kept on trying again to speak to the C-suite, and they finally listened. So it did happen internally with the case of Motorola, okay? So, but I still think the best way is external influence to the C-suite is the way to get started.
Yeah, see, one, as I see, and as I've been experiencing, the truth north is always the Toyota production system. Okay, they all look at Toyota. While there are many other companies who have excelled, Toyota has been liberal to tell us what it is in many ways.
Yes.
And they have many sensei's who are many of the Indian, the Globe Oval, they have visited Toyota, they have the sensei in them, and then they come back.
Yes.
That is but then they started, and still it doesn't get sustained.
Yeah. Well, again, for what it's worth, just human nature. If you're seeing something's working and it's working really well, solving a lot of your frustrations, you're not going to give up on it. You don't just walk away from that. I just think it comes down, they have to realize the impact on their business. It has to be real. It has to be financial for the most part. Yeah.
Okay. And this is what we discussed, and you emphasized the need when GE went into the early part into continuous improvement, which you were very clear was only process improvement. And then there was a decision taken that we need to get quick results, and we moved over to Six Sigma, and we started in the project mode in GE, if my recollection is correct, the way you explained to me.
Yes. Yeah. So I was part of that continuous improvement movement a few years prior to Six Sigma, and it was dying out. I mean, it was all good. I loved it. Everything we were taught was correct and would work, but we did not have the corporate leadership behind it. Okay. And in fact, I think I mentioned this to you. I came into work one day and my job was eliminated, me and many others who were full-time roles in continuous improvement. But why? Because no one could see the results.
In finance terms.
That pyramid that I was showing, the BOPI model, we didn't have that. We weren't aligned with what the C-suite really cared about. So it's not going to work. I don't care how good it is. It won't work. And then, of course, everything changed drastically when we went to Six Sigma. We were doing lean at that time, but Six Sigma became our primary methodology. And my goodness, I mean, it was night and day difference, very aggressive on making a financial impact. And so we see, when you're doing that, you're going to reward people, Dr. M. If people can be part of making that financial impact, you're going to reward them. I mean, you'd be stupid not to. because they're increasing their value to you. And so the reward system was significant for anyone involved in that Six Sigma methodology. And that attracted the best people and on and on. So that's part of change management, okay? So there has to be rewards for people that are reaching out, willing to take a chance, learn a new skill, go apply it. You know, they need to be rewarded for that when they're successful.
Yeah, what I hear you saying,
Right.
why is it echoing? Okay, what I hear you saying is, irrespective of what path you take, the C-suite or the top management should see the financial gains. And that's what gets them committed to the continuous improvement processes. Is that right, what I'm hearing?
That's right. And of course, they have to be at least somewhat convinced or they won't start. So there is an act of faith, so to speak, there. But of course, they have to see the results soon, not 5 years from now. They have to see the results soon or they won't continue. I don't think there's any mystery about that, Dr. M. That's just, I mean, that's a fact. And then the idea is, okay, how do we make that happen?
Yep.
That now, you see, that's what made Six Sigma take off. And that was mostly Dr. Harry. That's what made it take off. We had from Japan, we had, if I could say, just continuous improvement. We learned about total quality management. We had Deming, you know, those were all good things, but they didn't compare to the aggressive financial nature that was used, Dr. Harry used with corporations around Six Sigma. There was no comparison that way. So I have the privilege of experiencing both worlds and respect them, but you can see I'm pretty hard over on financial impact for sustainability.
Is it got to do with, this is just a hypothesis, I'm not saying yes or no, but does it have to do with the tenure of the CEO? If the CEO of an organization, they have fixed tenure and they have to show improvement, I don't know whether the CEO changes, the emphasis changes, I don't know. Does that affect?
Well, maybe there's a board. I've had this case with some clients. The board of directors putting pressure on the CEO. So that kind of comes from the outside. And look, their CEOs are way over busy. I know that. We know that. So if it's not going to be a big deal, they're not going to give any time to it. Okay. It has to be a big thing. So the board of director tells the president, they need to see these kinds of margins or this type of cash flow. So I've had that. Okay. So the president, let's say it's the CEO. Okay. Well, I'm hearing the pressure, but no one's telling me how to do it. Now, they have some ways. Well, okay, we're going to lay off people. We're going to sell it. Well, those are some ways, but they're not efficient. So when you bring lean in and you bring in these kinds of methodologies that are not expensive to do, now you not only know what you have to do, but you know how to do it. And a CEO has to be taught that. You have to be taught. Then you can recognize, oh my goodness, we can do this. So it's that, I think it's outside pressure coming in, usually from the outside. And then, okay, I give in. We've got to achieve this, but I don't know how to do it. Well, you see, at that point, you're open to a methodology like lean or the combo of lean and Six Sigma. So I think that's how a successful deployment gets started.
Right. So coming back to what you were saying in episode 6, and now you're talking about is that irrespective of whatever method you want to adopt, uh, you have to have a management system for that, which
Yes.
supports and sustains it. Right? I'm talking about the macro approach. I'm not getting into the micro at
Yes.
this point of time. And then we said, you explained to me the pyramid in your first slide, and then I'm sorry I diversified or moved out a little, but then I'm coming back.
No, I'm happy to talk about anything you want to. Yeah.
Yeah, no, what I really want to is to know how to sustain a support and spread it across to the community. That's the interest. So,
Well, there's very specific roadmaps on what we
yeah,
would want executives to do. There's very specific training on that. Now we're not getting into that. We're
yeah,
talking very general, but yeah, it's going to work. I mean, it's been proven over and over again. If it's done right, it works. So that's the secret. How do you do it right? Well, it's not a secret really. It's out there, but it has to be done.
yeah. Jeff, I have a small request. Since
Yeah.
I'm responsible for uh, diverting it, can I see the first slide on the pyramid so that we get the continuity again? Yes. So we started with the business and the focus, and then we went into the operation level, what we need to focus in the operation level, and then we went into the process level. This is where we check the projects, and then we move down to the individual level. And we said the communications here has to be continuously moving up and down the flow of communication, and it has to be in certain intervals. The shorter, the better. That's
Yes.
am I right in
Yes.
summarizing this, sir?
Yes. It's a good summary. And see, you would have, dashboards are very popular these days, but you would have each level would have a dashboard of some kind. So you're measuring, you're going to set goals for these things, and that's not new to any business. But keeping these various, I'm just drawing different dashboards and stuff. Having a dashboard at these areas is very important because you literally want those metrics to correlate. We're
Yeah,
talking about
yeah.
measurements, and they're correlated, not just ideas, not just concepts,
Mm. So,
metrics that are
yeah,
correlated.
yes, I understand this because otherwise they will be working as isolated islands, right? Not
Yeah,
connected to each
yeah,
other.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
And you don't have time to work on everything.
yes.
In continuous improvement, as we practice it, everyone was involved and everyone was in their area making improvement. Okay, we want that. We want that. But we're also interested in rapid results, breakthrough, as we say,
Yeah,
in the world of Six Sigma. And these are the kinds of things that this is like a control function. You see what I mean? And
yeah.
look, we had this. It was amazing, Dr. M. So we had the chief financial officer say, hey, this particular business within GE, all businesses have their ups and downs, but this particular business is down a little bit. This quarter, we need an extra 300 million. Okay, now think about, we know how to do that because we know how many projects we have to start in order to get a yield. You see what I mean? So there's yield on projects that are started and run to successful completion. So we would know, okay, we need another 300 million this quarter. I've got to start 800. I got to put 800 additional projects in the pipeline. That's a control function, Dr. M. I can't overestimate how powerful that is. Okay, because you've got the pyramid, you've got the correlation, you've got the experience, you got the data, typically how much money you save per project, on and on and on. I mean, that is a dream come true for a CEO to know that control function. Okay. And I'm saying we had that. when we were being successful, we had that. Okay. So it was a privilege to be a part of a system like that.
Okay.
Oh, and I was just going to show this. This is kind of the general flow.
Yeah.
Is this some kind of scientific breakthrough? No, but you have to understand the roadmap and it has to be executed. So up here, what's the need? And we're always looking at what's the gap between the way things are now and what you would like them to be. Well, I need more capacity, or I need more throughput, whatever. I need more of that, because if I can make more of it, I can sell it. Well, anyway, that becomes part of the business strategy. Well, then with the gap identified, the leadership at various levels are going to start identifying their focus areas, and eventually they will come down into individual projects.
Jeff, just hold. What
Yeah.
I'm curious about is, we do this in most of the CI processes. We do that. We define the
Yes.
gap, where we are and where do you want to go. That's
Yeah.
But what I like in what you have put is, you have put benefit in dollars.
Yeah.
That means you have to reduce that, or you have to express that if you fill up this gap, this is going to be benefit in dollars in financial terms. Is that what you're emphasizing?
Yes. Yes. It's all about this. Y is a function of X. So X's can be, it's supposed to be an X, but X's can be a temperature setting on a process, or the X's could be the projects themselves, because completing those projects causes the gap to close, for example. It's all about that. And you got to measure it. You can't just live in the world of concepts, okay?
Jeff, what I hear you saying, I'm again repeating the same thing, because this is something that I don't hear very often. I hear the closing of the gap. I hear that. We strive for that in every CI interventions, but we don't say that this is the benefit we are going to accrue if we close the gap. I don't hear that being said very often. And you emphasize on that we emphasize that if we close the gap, this is what we may get, would get, etc. But there is a dollar attached to that. Whether we achieve it or not is a separate issue. But to start with, and that is what attracts the CEO when he sees that.
Yes. Yeah, that's what should drive them. Because Dr. Harry used to say, if you learn about Lean and Six Sigma as a CEO, and you choose not to do anything about it, he would say it in the world of the analysts, some legal implications, that's dereliction of duty. In other words, this is very bold, but he would say that. He would say, if the CEO did not act on what they've learned here, they have it's dereliction of duty. They have not met their responsibilities, because it's going to make the business healthier financially, and they choose not to do it. See that? So he would threaten. He was one of a kind, but he would threaten CEOs with things like that, to wake them up. So what do you think, Dr. M? Are CEOs risk adverse? Do you think they're risk adverse, or do you think they're willing to take risks?
Honestly, I think the CEOs are willing to take the risk, provided they see the dollar sign there.
Yeah.
And that's fair enough. I can say, with my experience in India, that we show them the money. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's, I can say for myself, I'm not generalizing it for the other practitioners in India. I can say for myself, I show them the money out of we don't call it projects, okay? We call it events, right? We do a
Yeah.
5-day event. We reduce that. We show them the savings. We show them the hard cash involved, and then they get attracted. They monitor it, and that's how we
Yes.
go. And then
Yes.
it's only later that the cultural elements comes into the picture.
Yeah.
Because for us, I mean, what I have experienced is I don't chase culture, first of all, initially. I mean, for me, the culture has to evolve as and when there is a culture. I'm sorry that it's our show, so permit me to talk. Also, is that I find that the culture is from the person who owns the business. And earlier we used to, I mean, most of the companies in India are privately owned. Okay, there are very few
Okay.
publicly owned, and the
Okay.
culture of that individual or the person flows down the line. Okay, and
Yeah.
that's India, and that happens. So the work culture evolves. It takes time for it to evolve, but if we have to sustain it, we show them the money, and then we sustain that, and we hope over a period of time there is some sort of a culture that evolves. I have not, frankly, been involved in transforming an organization. Honestly, I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so you have been. So
Well,
let me hear you.
you're right. The culture will change when you implement these methods. It will change, but there's a lot of culture, like how you treat one another. There's a lot of other elements of culture that aren't necessarily changed by all this, but it is a culture changing methodology for sure, for sure. And I think in general, I think lean is much stronger at making culture a significant part, of the implementation. They seem to be more sensitive to that and value the culture. Whereas honestly, Six Sigma was just hard rocks. Let's go get the money. You know what I'm saying? So you do need both.
And we need a management system, as you rightly said. We require a system to
Yeah.
support these initiatives.
Yeah.
Right?
But when you get these projects identified, this is where you and I were talking about, if you want to let the main methodology be lean, that's fine. But you still have to go through this little cycle I'm talking about. That's kind of another view of the management system, very high level. But you could even do that there's lots of improvement methodologies. I just think today, the Lean and Six Sigma combination has proven to be the most valuable, but there's many others. But regardless, you have to go through this kind of thinking, this type of oversight. And anyway, and then I think I had one more. No, that was it as
So
far as that BOPI.
it's therefore, yeah, that's a lovely flow that I got, and it'll take some time for me to absorb it. So let me see that pyramid again. We just
Yeah.
glance at it, and then we stop recording. So just give me a quick run through, Jeff.
Okay.
A run through
So
fast.
this is the business operations process individuals. This is a flow down, flow up model, much like Hoshin planning, of course. That's not new. What's new is the emphasis on the metrics. And so we want the C-suite to agree on a business strategy, and that's going to involve almost always financial metrics. So there's a focus, okay? And then at the operations level, in most cases, they're responsible for meeting that particular metric that was chosen by the C-suite, but they will have their own metrics. But these are their metrics. We want to make sure as we improve this metric, like a yield, we want to make sure it's impacting the strategic metric that we used. And then, of course, at the process level, this is where the projects are applied. It's always about improving processes. So each process has its own metric for measuring its performance, such as a first-time yield metric, some of these other ones, okay? But regardless, we want to know that when we complete this project, I have committed some level of improvement to what other business metric we're focused on. I want to know it's correlated. I don't want people choosing their own project. They don't know what to choose because at the business level, they know where you need to focus. And so from that on down, that drives everything.
And all these metrics are interrelated and correlated.
Yes. And I mean literally, Dr. M, I mean, if this is Y and this is X, I mean, you need to show that they are correlated.
Yeah.
Okay. You need to know when I complete this project. So let's just say this is some project down here. I want to know that this is my estimated impact on that top level Y. Okay. Or on that next level inventory turns, whatever it is. Correlation, that's a control function. And I can't emphasize enough, we know this, we know about setting goals and all this, we know that. But this is a little more rigor with the emphasis on the metrics and the process improvement and the training necessary to do that. This is not common sense management system here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's different.
Yeah, I understand that. And what you also told me during the course of it is, while this is a control function, that does not mean that it is a control in the sense of hard fist control. They also, the top management gives them the safety net to fail. Am I right in that?
Yes, that's right. The projects can fail because they weren't aligned. That's very common. But for other reasons, like they didn't get the resources they needed, they didn't have the right training. There's lots of reasons. So the leadership has to understand that. And again, if they're not involved in how these projects are turning out, they don't know how to make the corrections. So there's continual oversight. In fact, Dr. M, the model, we know a CEO can't just suddenly devote his or her full time to this. So we love the idea of a champion, whatever you want to call it, a champion that is full time over this stuff. And that champion, we had an excellent champion when we were successful at GE. He was a corporate officer, but he couldn't run a project, but he was excellent at what I'm showing you here. And he would meet weekly and make sure these metrics were moving in the right direction, aligned and things like that. But he was full time.
And he reports to the CEO.
Yes, he reported to the CEO before. So the idea of a champion is they are a recognized, successful leader. And when you appoint such a person to a champion position, you're telling the organization this is very important because that person already has that reputation of being very successful.
So practically he's a shadow of the CEO.
Yes, yes. And these champions have to be trained.
Yes.
They don't know how to do it. So it's not going to be known from internally how to do it. You got to have something from the outside come in, you see?
Right. So there you go. Your last word from you before we end the first part. And I like the concept and we need to absorb it. So I have
Yes.
this frozen for some time, and
Okay.
then we discuss the second part of episode 2.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
Well,
See you on the next side of it.
yep.
So with your permission,
Yeah,
we'll
I look
stop recording.
forward to it, and I appreciate the conversations. You ask hard questions. I'm doing the best I can. So
No, no.
could you ease up on those questions, Dr. M? Just ease up a little bit.
Right.
I'm kidding you. I'm kidding you. Okay.
Okay.